Welcome to number 6 in this series. In this part, we're going to finish up our tail section here and hopefully have time to do some basic unfolding or flattening out. So let's just get right into it. So I'm going to use the Spitfire's tail design as inspiration for this, where I'm basically going to have the hinge line run right along here, and I'm going to have this relief cut area to allow the elevator hinge area to run through here. And looking at the way the horizontal stabilizer kind of links in with things, I'm going to try and emulate that as well. So that should make it a little easier to actually build this particular model once we're done with the plans. So first I'm going to go ahead and divide up the tail. I'm going to want to run my hinge line right up along, let's say, that area, and I'm going to bring this straight across to that edge. Alright, and now I'm going to make a reference mark here right above and take it down. So it's going to be right below that elevator area. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and use this hinge line to try to line up the hinge for my elevator. And we're going to say that it is going to line up right about there and go all the way to there. Alright. Now let's go in and refine that. So I'm going to select everything except for my tail assembly. And actually I've got those into lines, so let me actually just select these guys and hide them. And now I can focus on this. Alright. And I'm going to actually hide my horizontal stabilizer here. Let's split that. Actually, before I explode that, let me there we go, hide. And I actually want to make that line here in the component, so that it goes all the way to, actually looking at where I've got that split, I'm going to revise that shape a little bit. So let me get rid of that, and I'm actually going to pull this further back a little bit. So let me just pull that up so I can easily hide this, and then just kind of scale this side panel for my needs. Oops. Scale. Let me pull this back here to about, that looks good. Alright. And now that I've got that scaled, I don't actually need this geometry up here. So I'm just going to kind of get rid of some of these extra lines. And there may be times when you're designing your model that you'll find it hard to manipulate a certain facet or a certain area, and it can be helpful sometimes to just go ahead and pull in some geometry and some using the push-pull to get some thickness to it, and it kind of gives you a bigger, easier to manipulate area. You'll also find that since we are designing an airplane, there may be times where you've designed a particular part of the plane and it looks good in the plans, and you've got it printed and cut out and built, and it doesn't quite work as well. This is an iterative process. So it's something that you're going to have to come back to, make little tweaks, make little revisions here and there, and perfect your design as you go along. But hopefully we'll be pretty close with our first shot here. Reverse faces there. All right. So that gives me a little bit more material to have in the rear area of my hinge line. So now I'm going to go back in and redo that hinge. Pull up close to that edge. All right. Now, let's go from about there all the way out to our edge. There. All right, and while we're in here, let me hide this one. And you'll notice in David Vinderstall's design, which is beautifully elegant, he's got this nice little hinge relief area. This basically gives empty space for that elevator to go up and down without actually scraping along the sides of the rudder, or it also allows the rudder to swing left and right in the notch area of the elevator back here. So let's go ahead and put in this relief area here in our rudder. So I'm going to go to one of my side views, and I'm going to just pull out about 1/8 of an inch, and I can see that down here in the lower corner as I draw these lines. And then connect these to here, and I'm going to use an arch to give myself kind of that rounded area there. And I'm just going to kind of pull in my edge here. And once those are in, I should be able to remove, whoops, these faces. Oh, and see, now what I've done here is all these lines I put in, they're outside of the group. So this tail is grouped, but the lines while they were laying right on it, they're not actually intersecting the face. So let me go ahead and since this is a flat surface and it doesn't have a whole lot of extra geometry, what I can do is I can draw these on the surface of this group, and now if I explode this group, then basically it's now back out of its grouping and these can actually intersect it. So if I were to actually remove these faces with luck, there we go, we get our void in our hole here that we're looking for. And then I can just select it all and group it back again. And I may have to make some adjustments once I get my other hinge line in here. I may have to sweep this up a little bit more or whatever, but we'll feel our way through that. Alright, now let's see here. I'm going to unhide all and see how that looks. Alright, so it looks like it's lining up alright, but you'll notice that if I hide the fuselage, the two sides of my horizontal stabilizer don't line up. That's because right now these are two separate components. I've been using a flipped component so that whatever I do on one side gets transmitted to the other. But at this point I'm pretty much done, I think, with tweaking the overall shapes and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break these apart or explode them. And let me hide my rudder for a moment. And I'm going to go ahead and connect these so that they are one piece. There we go. I don't need these lines, but I will need that. Alright, with luck, this won't be too thin. Let me go ahead and just move this back, whoops, along this axis just a little bit, because I think that's going to need a little more material than what was there before to strengthen that. Alright, now let's see if that makes us have to change our tail. Ooh, that's cutting it close. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to go select this, see if I can scale it up. And move it back just a little bit. Well, that's a little too much. Let's bring that back in. Alright. We'll see if that's enough clearance. Should be pretty close. Because, again, this elevator, this is more of a trainer-style airframe. This elevator is not going to be doing a bunch of large sweeps. So, you know, the degree of this angle should be plenty to allow this thing to fly well. Alright. So at that point, my hinge lines are all put in. And now I'm ready to try and create this notched assembly structure, kind of the way that David did over here. So you can see he's got a slot for this notch on the vertical stabilizer, and these notches here on the side of that go into the back of the fuselage. If I can, there we go, locate that, it's back here. So we're going to try and do something similar to help anchor and strengthen this rear assembly. Alright, so we know for a fact that we're going to end up cutting out part of this top of the fuselage. So I'm going to kind of use some, I'm going to go ahead and group my horizontal stabilizer. And I'm going to group, that's already grouped, my tail's grouped, good. So those are separate. This way I won't have lines that might accidentally interact with each other. And we talked about this in one of the earlier tutorials where we were talking about the difference between grouping things and having things just as shapes and faces and edges. So what I want to do is divide up this fuselage, but I want to kind of make sure that I'm putting the division lines at the proper point. So I'm going to go into this and pull out basically the thickness of the foam core. So I'm going to pull this out to 3/16. Alright, and I'm going to end up removing this geometry afterwards. It's just kind of for my reference. You can see it actually kind of pulled down into there, but that's not a problem. We'll be able to correct that. But now I know exactly where I need to put that line on my fuselage. So let's go in here and we're going to pull it right along. I know that this kind of goes forward a little bit, so I'm going to go a little bit out here. And let's see here. What if I hide that? There we go. Now I can see exactly where I want to bring, this line. Alright, so it does go straight across at that point. Alright, good. So I can just use that as my corner here. And I'm going to go straight up the blue axis to that edge. I don't need this. And bring this straight across. Come down from here right to that edge, and then take that all the way out there. Alright, so now let me hide this. Now I should be able to go in and remove these extra edges. Alright, now I've created a nice little notch for my horizontal stabilizer to sit, but we do need to build up our little anchor notch that we have here. And that is what we're seeing on this part. So what I'm going to do is, in my design, I'm going to try, he's basically got it recessed so that the thickness of the elevator sits down this much into it. Ours is a little deeper just because of the placement of our horizontal stabilizer. So I'm going to design a notch that comes up and bites into the horizontal stabilizer to hold it. And to do that, I'm going to see if I've got about an inch worth of space here, and I'm just going to say I'm going to start it there, and let's see, oh, I got plenty of room. So there's an inch. I'm watching down in the lower right corner. All right, and so now I've got an inch segment with endpoints at each spot. So if I come up 3/16 of an inch, which I know is the thickness of my foam core, and come over and then down. Oh, I was not on the right plane as I brought that across there. So let's do this. I can just start my line from this point, come straight up 3/16, and then connect those two. There we go. Alright, and I'm just going to use an inference line across this to put my other notch in on the other side. Now theoretically, since this is a symmetrical airframe, I could really just design one side of it, and then once I unfold it, just copy that and flip it so it's a mirror image. But just for the sake of practice, I'm just going to go ahead and put this notch in on the other side. And I'm going to use, actually let's do it this way. I'm going to use an inference line rather than drawing an actual line. So I'm going to take my line tool, I'm going to hold here for just a moment, which basically tells SketchUp I want to infer something from there, and you can see I've got this dotted red line. That lets me pull out and then up 3/16, and telling it I'm going to infer from this line across the red axis to here and come up 3/16 and connect them. So now I've got my tab on both sides, and I don't actually need this, so I can get rid of that line. Alright, now I need to make the corresponding slot in my horizontal stabilizer. So let me unhide. Oh, let's go ahead and unhide all, it looks like. Alright. Now let me hide my tail for now. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and take this back up. Since I pulled down this geometry to use as reference, I can actually just pull it right back up to that same plane and it gets rid of it. Alright, and you can see I'm just touching the top edge of that. So if I'm looking at this and imagining that I've already got the thickness of this foam core in the horizontal stabilizer, I'm just going to add my little notch so that it would align to that. And I'm going to add it inward. So basically this is going to be the external surface of my fuselage right here, and instead of the foam core having it come out from that, it's basically going to be folded over so that the thickness is internal to the fuselage. So that's why I'm going to take my notch from here and go inward to make the square for it. Alright, so to do that, let me go ahead and use this as my reference, and I'm going to draw both exterior edges first, and then I'm going to draw, let's see here, thinking about what would be the best way to kind of pull this off if it's going to be right at the angle. Let's do this. I'm going to go to my top view, and since I know that this is a 1 inch line here, and I know that the thickness is going to be 3/16, let's just draw a square that is that size, and I can rotate it into place there. Alright, so you notice that when you draw squares and so forth, you get these dimensions down in the corner. Well, you can actually dial those in. So if I draw this out, I can say that this is what it was when I released it, but I can change this to be, okay, I want this to be 3/16 of an inch wide by 1 inch. And when I hit return, that actually punches those dimensions right into the shape. So when you're wanting to create something that's is very specific size. You can actually specify the size by punching it in after it's created. For instance, if I had a circle, right now it's got a radius of, or a diameter of 3/16 all the way around. If I go like this, I can actually change that and say, okay, I wanted it to be 1 inch, and it would set it to that size. All right. Bring that back in there. All right. So what I'm going to do now is select this and group it for a moment, just to make it easy to move into place. And I'm going to move it right up onto that edge so that it's sitting up there, and I'm going to bring it right up to that corner, and I'm then going to rotate it by that same corner so that it lines right up there. Alright, so I've got my box here, and I'm going to duplicate it across, and I'm going to rotate this one so that it lines up. So I'm going to rotate it on the green axis, flip it all the way over, and I'm going to use it to go back here. So I'm sort of using this shape as a cookie cutter to basically press my shape into there. Alright, so now if I explode this and explode that and explode that. So now basically the cookie cutters have cut into that area, and they're on the correct angle and so forth. So if we were to see what this looks like, if I go ahead and, whoops, oh, I had that stuck to it now, so let me go back a few steps before there we go. Alright, so before, I don't actually want to ungroup it all the way. I just want to go in here and ungroup my little cookie cutters. So let's explode those. And then there. So I can see that I'm still grouped within here, so my tail geometry is not intersecting and interfering with my fuselage. They're still separate. There we go. Alright, and just to kind of see how that's going to look, if I go in here, I can pull down some geometry, and I can see that it's basically going to just slot right into those. So here we're sort of seeing an X-ray view of how those slots are going to work. Alright. Now I'm going to need to modify this rudder here. So let me unhide all, because I need to design it so that I can have my tab come down here. So I'm just going to make a quick little reference mark on my rudder. To tell me about where that's going to be. And let's go to the side view while I'm at it. And I'm just going to kind of use this to mark out on my rudder where this area is defined. Alright, for the fuselage. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and hide my fuselage. And make it group and then hide it. There we go. Whoops. And make sure I get the whole thing selected before I make it a group. And then hide it. Alright. And I'm going to edit this out. I need to look over here for something. There we go. Alright. back to it. Alright, so I don't think we're actually going to need this bottom area once we get all of our notches put in. And I'm going to hide my elevator there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and draw this straight across there. And I know that this is going to be the surface of my horizontal stabilizer, so let's go ahead and say we're going to have a notch that's 3/4 of an inch long, and we'll come down our 3/16 and go right up there. Alright, and I can go ahead and continue this all the way across. Whoops. Is that on the... Oh, that's why it's throwing me off. So I had drawn those lines on a different plane. No pun intended. It just makes me giggle every time I say it, so bear with me. Alright, so let me go ahead and just kind of draw these little oversized here. And then I'm going to adjust them. So I don't need these that were just kind of floating off into space. And there we go. Alright, so now let me go back here and put in our notch. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and actually bring this down. Alright, get rid of that. Whoops. That. And that. Alright, now I'm going to shape this down just a little bit. Alright, and that should give us that notch. Oops, get back out of there. Now if I unhide all. Alright. So I can see I've got my notch here, and actually we may be able to move this notch forward or make it a little bit bigger, but for now I think, or that tab, I think that'll be fine. Alright, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a bit of a downward notch here in the front of the fin, or the rudder. I'm just going to add a little segment there just for reference. Actually, let's bring that a little closer to those other notches. Alright, let's go ahead and hide that, and I'm going to bring this down that full 3/16. Go over to here and pull that up. Oh, and I'm doing this outside the group again, so let me go into the group and make that. That will work a whole lot better. So down our 3/16, over to here, and up. There we go. Alright, we'll see if that works. And since I'm thinking, again, we're sort of just doing this by eyeballing it and working through problems as we come across them. I'm going to need a little bit of a notch in the top of my fuselage. maxed out, I think we'll add a little bit of strength and stability as well. So let me go in here and add that notch. And 3/16 of an inch wide, and up. And that should allow us room in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull more of that vertical stabilizer down into that notch. So that notch gives a little bit of place where we can put some hot glue and grip in our construction. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect that to there. And we'll see if that works out when we go to build it. Alright. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with my notches and my tabs to hold my tail together. We'll see how it... Oh, actually I need to add the hole for the vertical stabilizer. Alright. So let me put my line in there. Let me hide this. Go to my top view. And I know that this is going to be a 3/16. Alright, looks a little bit off center, but we'll see. Oops. Again, I made that outside the group. Let's try again. Hide that. Now go into the group. And I'm going to come off 3/16. Go 3/16 in there. Alright. We'll see how close those go. And save. I'm now saving. Because I don't want to lose all this work. Alright. Now, if I go back out and unhide all, there we go. I think we're about ready to unwrap. And I may go ahead and put that out as a separate episode so I can go ahead and call this one done. But don't worry, I'm going to try and get both these episodes out about the same time.